Stop! You violated the law. But you stopped to begin, are you? Well, I heard you watching this video about Oblivion, and I heard it went a little bit something like, welcome back. Today we're gonna be talking about Oblivion. Oblivion is one of those games that I didn't originally play back in 2006, as that would have put me at the grand old age of 5. And I personally didn't really play that sort of game when I was 5, partially because I didn't understand English and partially because I was very obsessed with Lego. So, when Oblivion Remastered or the remake came out, it was an entirely new Elder Scrolls experience for me. And I didn't mind that at all. I very much enjoy my Elder Scrolls, or my Elder Schlop, as I simply find these games to be very fun dungeon exploring simulators and not much else. But Oblivion does kind of stand out in quite a few ways, mainly through its many weird systems, including potion crafting, spell crafting, enhancements, and that sort of thing. It makes the game into a weird, quirky sort of spellcrafting simulator where you can do some really wild things, almost to the level of Risk of Rain OG, getting all of the speed up adrenaline boost type of thing. You even have skills for things like acrobatics. So if you want to level up jumping, yeah, you can in this game. And that's kind of cool. But it also comes with a downside of a lot of things just feeling a little bit tacked on and not getting the attention that they need. Chief amongst which, things like the combat system, feeling a little bit rough around the edges, as it at the end of the day evolves into you spam clicking attack until enemy dies, at least on a lower difficulty, right? But that doesn't mean that this game is bad. Oblivion, especially the remaster, comes with all the DLC and expansions and stuff, so things like the Shivering Isles are included. And the Shivering Isles are amazing. And I will also just straight up say it as it is. I find some of the dialogue to be very Bethesda dialogue-y, and that's no surprise because it's Bethesda that made this, right? So it's not really a big surprise, because this is technically speaking a remaster. They have done a lot of like new things with the graphics, they've remade a lot of the graphics, but a lot of the things within the game remain its old self. The stories and missions that you're gonna be doing are still the original Oblivion missions. And we can still see some of the same bugs in the game now that we could back in the day. And I find that to be really interesting. So let's just get right into it. The combat system in Oblivion, despite being some of the things that you'll do the most, can feel a little bit lackluster. At least if you don't include things like spell crafting, because yes, spell crafting can do a lot. But if you're talking about the melee system, it is literally just the normal light attack for normal clicking and holding your mouse button in, then your heavy attack, which deals slightly more damage, and as you level up, you can apply different effects. And that's all well and good. However, coming off things like Kingdom Come Deliverance that have more of these unique combat systems and all of that, I personally find it very lackluster. Not because it's bad, mind you, this is very serviceable. It is very standard for first-person dungeon crawl to have these sort of combat systems. It's just that there's no really weight to it, there's no anything really there, but it's not bad in that sort of sense. It really does its job. You can still kill enemies and still do damage, and it doesn't feel terrible to do. It is just, especially as you progress the game, it can become a little bit annoying to do, especially melee combat, and I found myself catering more towards range and magic, and that is partially because range allows you to move away from the enemy, still hitting behind the shield and then you're aiming with your bow, and it allows you to have enhancements on, you know, arrows and stuff like that, having these weird effects and all of that. It also allows you, if you're using magic, to create your own spells, because destruction spells in Oblivion are just a tiny bit broken, just as a small amount, because essentially you can create a spell where you apply both weakness to whatever element that you're doing the damage with, and a weakness to all magic attacks and the fucking element that you're attacking with. So you don't have to ever swap, you can just use one spell. That's what I've been doing throughout most of my playthrough, and while it isn't the most efficient way to do that sort of setup, it still results in pretty much just an insta-kill if you hit an enemy twice with a spell, as the game essentially just by like 200% your damage, I think. The calculations themselves are a little bit hard, and I'll link to an article down in the descriptions that goes over the calculations exactly for how that damage is calculated. But the TLDR is that you completely annihilate your enemies. And it works pretty much like that with a lot of things. You can also do that with enhancements. I have had things like my nuke hammer that did exactly that as well. And it becomes a nice way to skip the worst part of the game, in my opinion, that being the combat, as it essentially allows you to just very quickly kill the enemies in front of you and move forward with the story. Because depending on the storyline that you are playing, the story can be really good, in my opinion. And I will fully admit that the writing can be very Bethesda-y, but that is not necessarily a bad thing all the time. Because especially old Bethesda, in my opinion, had some bang. Now, when we're talking about the story, it's important to realize that you have multiple stories within Oblivion. You see, you have your main story that revolves around you getting the Amulet of Kings and having to shut down the Gates of Oblivion to free Cyrodiil. But that is not the only story. You see, Oblivion sort of works like a canvas for multiple stories, in my opinion. And it has some really good ones in there. Things like the Magus Guilds that revolves around how necromancy has been banned, and now there's a cult of necromancers that are trying to get back into the Magus Guild and kill all the mages. That's a full quest line that completely could stand on its own. You could literally lift it out of the game, put it into any other game with like mages and stuff, and it will fit right in. Because it is pretty much just standalone. And that's pretty cool in my opinion, actually. I think it's really nice to see a story, especially in the game, where they create this entire elaborate storylines within the game's framing that takes place in the same world with the same characters, sometimes the same characters, but they could in theory stand by themselves. And some of the ones that I think are very standout, in my opinion, that you should experience are things like the Dark Brotherhood. The Thieves Guild especially also has some really cool missions. I really like the Mages Guilds too. And personally, the one thing you should experience if you end up picking this game up, and we all know how it is, it's an Elder Scrolls game, you pick it up and you get distracted immediately. The one thing you should attempt to do before you switch over to another game is play the Shivering Isles DLC, especially if you haven't done it before. The Shivering Isles, in my opinion, it is hands down the best piece of content in the entirety of Oblivion. It's so fucking good. From the writing to things like the quest lines and stuff in there, it's all really good. It essentially takes on this madness idea of a fantasy world. If you've ever watched Alice in Wonderland, I think it kind of has some inspiration from there, in the sense that it is all just very, very out there, and it is really cool. Essentially, it revolves around somebody having two personalities that periodically takes over him. And without spoiling too much, essentially one is this red madness theme, that is the one that you are helping. And then you're fighting against the orderly theme that wants to like put order into everything. And in the DLC, you get not only, in my opinion, the coolest armor in the game, but you also get some of the coolest fucking dialogue lines, period. I genuinely really enjoy the Shivering Isles. It's also in there you can get a dog that unfortunately can die. I think, my opinion, right? But don't have it die, man. Like, at least give me the option to just send it to one of my houses and just let it stay there. Like, it's a cute dog. It might be an undead dog, sure. It might be a skinned dog. I don't care. It's a cutie puppy. And I think that is like one of the things that I sort of have this gripe with, is especially the NPC. Because yeah, this is very much still Oblivion. And some of the NPCs can act in very Oblivion way. You have surely seen some of the compilations of NPC dialogue. Hell, I did a nod towards it at the beginning of this video. But there's so much of that in this game. It is insane. And part of it can be a little bit charming, I'll be honest. But it can also be the most distracting thing in the world. And that's not to say that it's necessarily bad. It's alright, man. It's fine. But like, holy, I gotta admit, sometimes it could get me a little bit on the insane. I could be going to that asylum soon, you know. Arkham Asylum wouldn't be living there without me for long haul. But if you don't take it too seriously, and you sort of just vibe with it, I think Oblivion can be this sort of nice, just real camping trip with multiple adventures kind of thing, right? That you have this big map, beautiful map even as well. It's a big and beautiful map with the prettiest skybox ever, and you sort of just go around and explore it and find different quest lines and different items. And if you play it like that, then Oblivion is legitimately really good. It's such a cool game to experience, like, because there are so many weird, quirky things. One of the things that I found really cool personally, and just a little tip for you when you start your own playthrough: if you find the open lock spell, and you might not like picklocking, maybe you're like me, you think the lock picking in this game, just like me, kind of sucks. It's kind of bad, especially at the earlier levels. So what do? Well, you find yourself an open lock spell that can open the lock that you pointed at. It might just be a very easy open lock spell. Then you go over to the crafting station for your spells, and then you just make an open very hard lock spell instantly, so you can open all of the doors in the game, period. Unless they're underwater, in which case you still need to do a little bit of lock picking. But a little tip for that, if you want to cheese a little bit, then if you just open the first lock, like the first little pin in it, and you just spam space as you go, as it like moves up and down the little lock pick itself, then you still get XP for some reason, and that can max out your lock picking very fast. Just a little tip from me. But overall, I think Oblivion is really fun, even if you just experience it like I just said, like a camping trip essentially, with a few different stops at the major cities and a few dungeons to explore along the way. Maybe you'll even help out the locals with their quests and stuff. And that's really fun. But honestly, I think the Oblivion remaster, as it's called, is really alright. I definitely think for 40 bucks it's worth it. Like, personally, when it comes to value, I think that's a pretty good price for an Elder Scrolls game, just because of how big they are alone and with the amount of dungeons and stuff there is to explore. It's really quite interesting. And honestly, I think I miss a lot of these systems, especially when you look at Skyrim and how the Elder Scrolls series sort of have progressed since, being that there is no Elder Scrolls 6, there's Skyrim and Online, and I don't really consider Elder Scrolls Online a real part of that. So if you look at Skyrim, the way you can see it's progressed, but not having any of these weird quirky things. Things like the athleticism skill, the aerobatic skills that can like level up jumping so you can jump fucking insanely high and things like that. These things don't exist in those games, and I think that's a shame, because honestly, a lot of these sort of things adds a lot of personality to the game. Things like the spell brewing in Oblivion, or spell crafting and potion brewing, it adds a lot just the vibe of the game. Not because it's necessarily super immersive. It's not Kingdom Come Deliverance where you sit down and you get all of these fucking things that you have to combine. No. It's much simpler. You just get to pick and choose from effects and add it to your fucking potion until you've created some concoction of one-shotting whatever it touches, or maybe of infinite jumping or whatever. Like, there are a lot of different things you can do in the Oblivion remake or remaster as well, and I think that's such a shame to not see go on to other Elder Scrolls. And it's one of those things that I genuinely hope that the Elder Scrolls 6 just let me have these fun and weird skills. They might not be the most meta pick, they might not be the best, but goddamn if it isn't fun to be able to climb every building in Syrah. And anyway, that's about it for me. I don't have much more to say on the Oblivion remaster. It's very much so just Oblivion, and if you've played Oblivion before, you know exactly what you're getting. If you haven't played Oblivion before and you like Skyrim, I would consider picking it up because it is quite fun. But with the one caveat that yeah, it does play like Oblivion, which means it does feel kind of old sometimes. And if you can't get over that, that's really the main issue you will probably find. And also, once again, and one final time, Shivering Isles is a must play. That shit is so good. Anyway, I'm signing off. I'll see you all next time. Now, either you pay the court a fine or you subscribe to this channel for this breaking of the law.